Hello folks, Alex here. This is Alex Unabridged, and today it's time for my wrap-up for June's Adventures in Genre. And June was for joy, which means LGBT plus romance. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, another month's done. We are into July now, so it's time to look back at June's Adventures in Genre. And seeing it was Pride Month last month, I went for June for Joy and some LGBT plus romance books. So I picked four. I picked one for the L, the G, the B and the T. So let's get straight into them and find out if I've actually found some romance books that I like, because my experience with romance previously has not been favourable, should we say. I haven't read any for years. I read a couple of bits and pieces when I was younger, but nothing that really kind of did anything for me. So let's get straight into it with the book that I chose for the L, and this was One Last Stop by McQuiston. This follows the life of August Landry, who is a 20-something young woman who moves to New York City to kind of start afresh, does a new chapter in her life. She finds herself living amongst quite a diverse group of quite quirky roommates, and sort of falls into a general routine. And as part of that, she takes the subway train pretty much every day, and she meets a mysterious and somewhat enchanting woman named Jane on the subway. Develops a crush on Jane, and they kind of meet regularly on the train, and she discovers that Jane is actually displaced in time, and has been riding the same subway line basically for decades, and so together they embark on a journey to find out what exactly is going on, how Jane has been trapped there, and how to get her out of this time loop. So yeah, this one this is a 4 out of 5 for me. I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed this. This was a library book, so I don't have the physical book with me anymore. But yeah, I thought, yeah, I'll give it a go because it's not costing me anything from the library. But I really didn't expect to like it that much based on the sort of the premise and stuff. And yeah, it just goes to show how wrong I can be. It's a very easy read. It's light-hearted and funny. The humour I think certainly for me lands well. It's a sweet romance. The characters are, that they're not super deep, but they are developed enough to feel like they all have very sort of distinct personalities and distinct traits, and are kind of very much there, to sort of add very specific things to the story and kind of to progress the plot and stuff. And they're all very they're all interesting characters. They're all quite likable, really. But yeah, they're all interesting characters. Her roommates. You've got a psychic trans guy and his girlfriend, who is an artist, but has come from a scientific background, so he's very, very good on the science side of things, especially when it comes to the time loop stuff and sort of quantum physics and very random things like that. And the third housemate is just kind of he's a gay guy, and he's kind of messed up, but he's an interesting balance to the kind of the very upbeat characters in the other two. And Jane is a really intriguing character, quite mysterious, but again very, very likable character. Yeah, the romance is sweet. It's but not overly so. It's not saccharine. It's got some good sexual tension written in there, and the sex scenes, when they do happen, are, I think, tastefully done. The the language that's used is it's not blatant, it's not that forthright, but it's well done. It's, you know, there's not lots of euphemisms used that are kind of corny and stuff like that. It's well done. It has a decent level of hotness to it, despite the fact that there are a couple of sex scenes kind of on the subway, not necessarily in front of people, but you know, there are some public displays of affection, not sex, but public displays of affection and stuff like that. Quite intense stuff on the subway, with other people around, which normally I would hate because I really don't like public displays of affection. But it kind of, you know, it fitted within the world of the book. And, you know, in terms of the sex scenes on the subway, it's like, well, where else are they going to do it? Because Jane's trapped on there. She can't get off. She can't get off the train. So it's like, you know, you've got to work around that somehow. What I really liked, I think, and what really kept me invested in this was the time loop stuff, the kind of magic realism. There is some magic realism elements within this. I think if this had been a kind of a bit more of a straight, you know, real world romance, I might not have been as invested. But I really liked the kind of the science fiction-y sort of magic realism stuff coming in. It was interesting, and there was tension to do with that as well. There was tension to do with, are they going to be able to get Jane off this train, out of this time loop, and if they can, is she just going to get, you know, sucked back essentially to the era that she comes from, rather than into August's era. So yeah, that was very good. There are comparisons written in as well, in terms of, you know, it looks at the difference between how things were in sort of the 70s and 80s for queer people, and how it, you know, how things have changed and how it is today. It's a little clunky in parts, some of that, and a little bit sort of simplistic, but it still adds to the story, and I think it's a nice touch. It's not about that, but I think, you know, also it would be kind of remiss of the author, I think, to not look at that when you're talking about people from different eras, when you're you know, discussing a kind of a story about queer relationships. So yeah, so that was, you know, it was well enough done. There's also, like, what I found was quite a nice touch was at the beginning of each chapter there are like sort of like personal ads or newspaper ads, letters, etc., of people who kind of have come across Jane on that particular train line, that subway line, over the years that she's been trapped in this time loop, who've come across her, who've met her, who've had an encounter with her, and she's either helped them or saved them from, you know, a bully or you know, somebody homophobic or what have you, and they're trying to they want to try and find her again, and they can't. That was kind of nice to see, sort of through the ages, how many, you know, it added to Jane's character and stuff like that, in terms of how many people she's helped over the years. Yeah, it's overall, it's, you know, it's quite a heartwarming. It's sort of a kind of a snuggly romance. And do you know what? These days, maybe it's because I'm getting a bit older, and also because I am actually a hopeless romantic at heart. That I'm down with that. I quite like that, and certainly, if, as I say, if it's got like an extra element to it in terms of it's got some sci-fi stuff, but done in a sort of quite a you know, a fun way, nothing too deep, too dark. Then yeah. So I was, as I say, I was really surprised with this. This is a 4 out of 5, and yeah, really good, fun, quick read, really nice read. So that is the first one. Okay, onto the G of the LGBT, and this was this one, Heartstopper, Volume 1. My niece loves this, and I've heard lots about it. And so I thought, yes, do you know what? I will finally get around to reading it. This is it's a graphic novel, obviously. This is just Volume 1. that introduces us to Charlie and Nick, two teenage boys attending the same all-boys school. Charlie is an openly gay student, and he develops a crush on Nick, who is a popular boy, a rugby player, who seems to also be struggling with his own sexuality. And they become really good friends, and sort of the first volume sort of charts the development of this friendship, and explores sort of the themes of self-discovery, sort of complexities of sort of first love, young love, that kind of thing. It's very charming in terms of its illustration. It's heartfelt, it's warm, and you know it does capture, I think, the kind of the ups and downs of sort of adolescence and negotiating, you know, sexuality and relationships and friendships and all that kind of thing. This was a 5 out of 5. I loved this. In fact, I finished it and then I immediately went and bought a copy of Volume 2, which I haven't started yet, but I shall be doing at some point soon. Yeah, I thought this was great. I really like the illustration style in it. It's kind of loose and energetic in its style. It's you know, it's got kind of a scratchy quality. It's very, you know, sort of hand done. You know, it's very warm and human. It's a very charming style. The characters themselves are very relatable, and I think not just for a young audience today, but there's enough crossover in this with kind of my school days, which would have been the 1990s, to make it relatable to me. And I think that's a really, I think that's what's clever about it, in terms of, yes, of course, you've got, you know, smartphones and, you know, references to things that are current, but it's not reliant on that. It's about character, and it's about that negotiation of, you know, as I say, of like friendship, relationships, and, you know, sort of the anxieties around sexuality, and being out at school and having to deal with the sort of crap that you get at school if you're out. I came out at secondary school, and it's you know, things have changed, but they're still the same, if you know what I mean. I can see why it's so popular, definitely, and why, you know, it's been picked up for Netflix, obviously. It's very sweet, but at the same time, again, it's not saccharine. It tackles issues with around homophobia, questioning your identity, friendship, you know, making judgments about people as well. You know, like Nick, this kind of, you know, rugby player lad. You know, Charlie wonders about him to start with. Is, you know, like, you know, why is he paying attention to me? You know, thinks of him, maybe is he a bully, or, you know, is he just one of those kind of sports lads? And, you know, not making a judgment about people based on, you know, one thing about them. So yeah, very, very impressed with this. And as I say, I'm looking forward to reading Volume 2 as soon as my TBRs/Pals of Possibilities allow. It might be a month or two, but it's an easy read, so I'll pick it up at some point and just have a look through. So that is the G. Onto the B then. This was Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. This was a Kindle Unlimited pick that I got. This is a contemporary romance, quite a steamy one actually, that follows the life of Dani Brown, or Danica Brown, who is a fiercely independent and ambitious PhD student. I think it's meant to be at the University of Nottingham. There is reference to Nottingham in the book, so I'm assuming it's kind of meant to be University of Nottingham. And when a video of Dani and her crush, Zafir Ansari, who is a security guard at the building in which she works at the university, when a video of those two goes viral, they find themselves caught in a fake relationship situation that quickly turns into something more. But they need to navigate their own personal insecurities and emotional baggage. I've given this 3 out of 5. This was decent. There were parts of this that I really liked, and parts of it which were just kind of like, yeah, it's okay. You know, there was nothing bad about it, actively bad about it. But it was, you know, it's just kind of, it is what it is. It was you know, it was an easy read. It was well paced. It was you know, quite fun. I think, you know, diversity represented was done well. So you've got, you know, Dani, who's black, bisexual, PhD student. She's kind of a bit jaded. She's kind of anti-romantic, kind of definitely sort of allergic to commitment. And she's not good at expressing feelings. She's got kind of a bit of sort of social awkwardness, things like that. And then there's Zafir, who's a Muslim Pakistani British ex-rugby player turned security guard, who reads romance novels and, you know, kind of wants his own happily ever after. You know, they're two interesting characters. They are interesting characters. There are layers to those characters. And so, you know, it works. They are kind of, you know, sort of opposites attract, really. It deals well with issues like anxiety and mental health struggles. There's quite a lot in it about that, because that's part of Zafir's kind of backstory, and it deals with that well. There is sweetness to it for sure, but it is quite steamy in parts. The language used in, say, like the sex scenes is much more forthright, shall we say, than saying something like One Last Stop. It's you know, Talia Hibbert, you know, writes what she means, exactly what she means. There's you know, there's good tension in it. There's definitely very good sexual tension in it. I think it's like, you know, it's the run up to them actually kind of hooking up. You know, there's that works quite well. It is funny. It does edge somewhat into the cheesy or corny, maybe a little bit too much at times. And some of the language, some of the language in it, certainly from Dani as a character, can be quite crass sometimes, I think. Which sometimes is humorous and is played for humour, but again, other times it goes a little too far for me and just becomes a bit cringe. But it's not like a you know, a major issue for me in it. It's just, there was a couple of bits where I just kind of went, yeah, okay, you just maybe that's a bit much for me now. But yeah, again, another fun, easy, quick read. I ripped through that in a couple of nights. It kept me entertained throughout. I think it had a good resolution. It had good pacing to it. And yeah, it was another nice book. It's like, nice is a horrible word, isn't it? Another kind of heartwarming book. Another nice, I said it again. Another warm, that's what I mean. It's another warm sort of love story. With very modern characters, I think, and I did like that element to it. So yes, 3 out of 5. Wouldn't read it again, and I probably wouldn't necessarily read any of the others in this series. This is the second book in a series by Talia Hibbert, which is around the Brown sisters. Dani being one of them, and there's Chloe, who it was the first book was about, and the third book is about the younger sister Eve. And I don't know whether I'd read those, but you know, for that particular one, yeah, good fun read for a couple of nights. Finally, we've got the tea, and that is Felix Ever After by Kacen Callender. And this centres around the life of Felix Love, who is a transgender teenager. I think they're 17, and it's set in New York City, largely at a private art school where Felix is a student, and kind of, it's about Felix's, kind of struggles with developing their artwork and friendships with students, relationships with students, their fellow students, and their own kind of self-discovery in terms of their own identity, but also whilst dealing with issues of transphobia and finding their place in the world. This was a really difficult one for me. I've given it a 2.5 out of 5 because 50% of the stuff in here I really liked, and 50% of it I really didn't. And yeah, it's I know that this is quite a popular book, and I understand why, but I think at the end of the day, it's not written for me, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. So let's get to the good first. The things I did like, the discussion on trans issues. I think that was done well. The sort of issues around and discussion of transphobia and transphobic behaviour, both in the real world and the online world, that was handled kind of well, I think, in terms of the sort of things that people say and the sort of effect that it has on those that it's who are targeted. The sort of the issues around trying to understand your identity and figure out where you fit in, certainly as Felix kind of is trying to sort of figure out that they what they had identified as a trans guy that they no longer do, and they're trying to figure out what their identity is, that it's not a guy and it's not a girl, and what is the name, they're trying to find a word or kind of something that helps them describe to others essentially who they are, so that they can kind of exist, feel that they exist in the world. There's discussions around labels and the need for labels, or whether there's a need for labels, all that kind of stuff. That was quite interesting and well done. Negotiating relationships as a transmasculine person, I think that was well done as well. Sort of certainly the sort of worries that Felix has about whether you're actually whether you're valid, and also whether you're capable of being loved, of being desired. When you don't fit within the binary, particularly in terms of the physical, in terms of having a different and somewhat kind of mixed, non-binary essentially body, that is something that I can definitely identify with, and that's kind of, it's all part and parcel of feeling like you've got yourself to where you want to be in terms of your physical form and how you're perceived and stuff, but then also worrying about how others who are more you potentially going to be intimate with or want to be intimate with, whether you are actually desirable in that form, and that kind of that dichotomy of being cool with yourself and feeling comfortable in that, but worrying that other people might not be. That's something that I really think was explored quite well in this. The other thing is family, issues with family, knowing, like, for Felix, their dad has been supportive of their transition, but still struggles to use Felix's actual name, slips up and uses their dead name, and kind of says things that kind of makes them feel like the dad still is hanging on to this kind of sort of belief or idea that they've got a daughter, and not a son, and so knowing that they're supporting you and they're trying, but still finding it really difficult when these slips happen. Again, I know what that's like. I think probably a lot of us do who have been through transition, and it hurts, you know, and it's difficult to navigate. But you know, it's I think it's reasonably well discussed in this. The friendship between Felix and their best friend Ezra. Ezra is a lovely character. I have to say, I really liked Ezra as a character. You know, I think that was done really well. That was a really lovely part of the book. Most of the main characters are people of colour. It is, you know, it's always good to see diverse characters, and I think in YA stuff, because this is a YA novel essentially, you know, that's important as well. So those are the good things that I liked. The things that I didn't like, it felt too long. It did feel like it went on quite a lot and kind of repeated itself a lot, kind of went over things again and again and again. And I kind of didn't, but it didn't feel like things moved on much. It was just kind of, it felt like reiterations and a kind of regurgitations of kind of the same stuff. The characters in general, I couldn't connect with a lot of them. They felt somewhat superficial in some ways, and a lot of them, not necessarily Felix or Ezra, but a lot of the other characters. And there is quite a cast of characters in this, because you've got all of Felix's kind of fellow students. A lot of them felt kind of bland, and so yeah, I kind of couldn't really kind of get on with them very well. The biggest thing by far that I really didn't like, and why it's kind of got sort of this kind of very mid rating, was the whole catfishing storyline that's in it. You know, and the fact that leads to kind of like a love triangle, was just a bit kind of like, oh no. And then, you know, when the catfishing doesn't work, then there's a whole thing about like hacking other students' phones. You're getting into like illegal activity. And it just, yeah, I don't like that kind of thing at all. And it just didn't sit well with me at all. It's one of those where it's just not for me. It's just not for me. It's not necessarily that I think that it's poor quality. I don't. I think the writing is decent. And I say some of the conversations and the discussions and the ideas around the trans issues, I think, are well handled, and I think certainly in terms of the anxieties, etc., that Felix has, and some of the experiences that Felix has, are definitely relatable and are important to be, you know, that it's important that they're discussed. But in terms of the actual plot of the story, not for me at all. Not for me at all. This is very much a personal opinion. I know a lot of people have got a hell of a lot of value out of this book, and I will not take that away from them. But for me, no, it's just not for me. So yeah, it was a disappointment, because I kind of went into it kind of thinking, oh, excellent, you know, I'm going to really love this potentially. And no, I didn't. I think for me, you know, I've recently read Cemetery Boys by Ian Thomas as well, which is another YA novel with another transmasculine teenage character, Yadriel. And that one, that's my kind of book. That discusses similar stuff, especially in terms of family and acceptance and whether you're lovable and negotiating relationships and friendships and all that kind of stuff. But the way that it does it is very different. That one is more my cup of tea. Absolutely. That one is far more my cup of tea in terms of plot. I felt it was far more, the characters were far better developed. And it's just more my kind of book. But yeah, I mean, I still would say to people, you know, with Felix Ever After, read it, because it might be kind of your kind of thing. And in terms of the trans discussions, definitely it's there's some valuable stuff in there. So I wouldn't say this is I can't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it from a personal enjoyment perspective, but I would certainly say it's worth looking at and seeing what you make of it. So that's kind of where I came down with that one. That one was a really tricky one for me to kind of digest and think about and kind of put a rating on and talk about, to be honest, because I wanted to love it, because it's a book about, a young transmasculine protagonist, and unfortunately I couldn't. So I think there's a lot of disappointment there with that. But yeah, so that's where I came down anyway. A mixed bag for this month, but I think I would say generally I quite like romance. Which is a surprise to me. So I will try some more. I certainly will try some more queer romance. I'm not so bothered about non-queer stuff, but I like things where there's elements where I feel kind of represented, and my identity feels represented. So yeah, I will keep my eyes peeled for things and have a little look-see at some of the queer romances that are out there. Hello folks, editing Al here. I just realised that I didn't tell you what I'm doing for July's Adventures in Genre, so I better do that now. July is for Junior Jeepers Creepers, so that's horror books aimed at younger readers, so middle grade into YA, because although I read a lot of adult horror, I don't think I've ever really read some kids horror stuff. Kids and teens horror stuff. I read maybe one when I was a teen myself. So I thought I'd have a little look at what's out there. So for that I have got The Dark Deep by Brendan Reichs. I have got The Monsters We Deserve by Marcus Sedgwick. I've got Frozen Charlotte by Alex Bell. That one I'm very much looking forward to. My niece loves that one, so I'm going to give that a crack. And then I've also got an audiobook, which is The Girl from the Well, I think it's called, yes, The Girl from the Well by Rin Chapeko. So those are the four that I'm going to try and get through this month, and we'll see how I get on with some junior horror, and see whether horror for middle graders and teenagers can scare the pants off a 42-year-old. And seeing as I get scared reasonably easily, there's a good chance it will. So thank you very much for watching today, folks. If you've read any of these books and have enjoyed them or not enjoyed them, do let me know in the comments what you thought. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider giving me a like and subscribing for more content coming very soon. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.